This is the agenda for today. We will talk about different roles you can apply in data science. Today, we're going to talk about finding jobs in data science. I'll be sharing my experience over the last month and even before when I was looking for my first job in data science. I am the founder of Untitled Datascience, which is again a voluntary group of people trying to organize meetups and sessions like these. I'm also now a data scientist at Vahan. I very recently joined. I was going through the process of applying for data science jobs over the last month. Before that, I was co-founder and CTO at Recreate.ai, where we tried and built a product to convert text to video automatically. Before being a co-founder and CTO, I was founder in residence at Entrepreneur First, where basically I was trying to see how to get started with a new startup. And even before that, I was a data scientist at Indegene, where I did a lot of different things like building reports, dashboards, natural language processing projects, optimization projects, a lot of different kinds of projects that we had at Indegene. Prior to that, I did my master's in internet technologies and information systems from TU Braunschweig in Germany, where which actually helped me move my career towards data science, because my master thesis, my research project was a couple of data science projects. And even before that, in a previous life, I was an electronics engineer with a bachelor's in electronics and communication from MS Ramaya Institute of Technology in Bangalore. So this is a little bit about myself. I tell this because it might help you see how similar my path is or how dissimilar my path is with your path. Take my tips with context, right? So everybody's journeys are different. We can only learn by learning from their experience, but you need to have some context as to where I'm coming from. So this is the context. This is the agenda for today. We will talk about different roles you can apply in data science, who is a data scientist, and we will try and figure out what kind of profiles of data scientists exist and what kind of profiles are actually right for you. What kind of a data scientist are you? What kind of roles that you can apply? Then we will look into the preparation for these jobs. So what are the things that you need to know with respect to math, with respect to programming, etc., etc. And then we will look into the questions that you can ask companies before you accept a job or while you're interviewing itself, right? Interviews are supposed to be mutual. You're supposed to be understanding the company's requirements. You're supposed to understand the company, where it stands, what their values are, and check if they're aligned with yours so that there's a good fit and you have more satisfaction at work. So I will talk more about the kind of questions you can ask companies that might help you narrow down if that is the right role for you. And in the end, we'll take some question and answers. Okay, so we'll start looking at the different roles you can apply in the data science industry itself. So the data science industry now has multiple roles in them. If you what I like to call data science industry is all the roles that are involving the use of data. So these are the kind of roles that you would typically have some or the other involvement of data. The first one is the business analyst role, where you're essentially trying to understand the business objectives, trying to see how you can contribute to business, converting that business problem into a data problem, and conveying it to your more technical teams. So you're kind of looking out on what are the users doing, how many users are there, how can I account for churn if they're churning, how can I look for more growth of avenues using data, right? So this is what you would do as a business analyst at company. Then there's this data analyst role that's also something you can apply for. And this is also involves you to work with data. And this typically requires you to know some SQL, where you are writing SQL queries, getting data out of databases, and then maybe using that data to run descriptive statistics on top of it. Maybe you are presenting in the results in the form of a report or a dashboard. It's the same for a business analyst as well. You might also have to do reporting, dashboarding there. But data analysts are a little bit more technical, so they are able to write SQL queries, some programming sometimes, some Python or R, but typically your role is to do a lot of descriptive statistics as a data analyst. Then comes the role of a data engineer who takes care of the pipelines of data in your company, right? So essentially data exists in a lot of different places. I mean, I'm talking about as your company grows. If you're part of a bigger company, then data tends to grow in silos because there are a lot of different departments, and these departments don't talk to each other often, and you have valuable data stored in different departments in different kinds of systems as well. So how do you basically integrate all of this, build a pipeline, and maybe put it in a data lake or a data warehousing system, and allow the user, your end users here would be typically a data analyst or a data scientist, but allow them to consume that data, right? So as a data engineer, you're responsible to build those pipelines. And in fact, even a lot of these roles are big data engineering roles, right? Like Hadoop or Kafka or all of these things, these technologies are used by data engineers because the moment you start having tons of data coming in, you need systems that can reliably process them and store, and data engineers work on that. So yeah, data engineering role is also in fact a very widely available role in the industry. Not a lot of people realize, and this is one role that does not require a lot of mathematical skills, because this is more of an engineering role where you're building pipelines, where you're seeing what kind of databases to use, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. So data engineering is something that you can still look at if you're not keen on the math side of things, if you're not keen on if you're not keen on actually doing the extra work that is required for that. So data engineer is a good role that way. And these are also generally well-paid roles. So that is something you can also look at. Then you have the machine learning engineer role, who are typically looking at improving the performance of their models and trying to tune the hyperparameters of the models, or trying to get the best accuracy or best F1 score or best ROC curve or whatever metric they're tracking, right? So machine learning engineers typically are looking to build systems that involve the use of machine learning models, and their day-to-day job is improving the models that they're using, maybe by improving the way the data is represented, or by tuning that, like I said, hyperparameters, or by choosing a different model. So they specialize in that area of the field where they are where they're responsible for improving the performance of the model day in and day out. Research engineers are those kind of, these are far fewer roles. These kind of roles are far fewer because research engineers typically work in, researchers typically work in industries, in universities, and research engineers are typically found in bigger companies like Google or Facebook or your Microsoft, because they can afford to do research at that scale. So research engineers typically try and see how they can improve the current state of the art and build better models or build newer techniques to do existing tasks, right? Like, for example, if you're doing machine translation, you might be using a statistical machine translation model, or you might be using a neural machine translation model, or let's say you're using an LSTM model. How can you build something else, right, which is not even part of these families, right, where you are introducing new research and performing existing tasks better. So you're trying to push the state of the art for the current techniques. This is one example, but there are a lot of research engineers working on different projects. So yeah, like for example, I think Ian Goodfellow, he works on GANs a lot, generative adversarial network. He works at Google, right? So he's an example of a research engineer. He doesn't really work on a product. He works at how he can improve GANs itself. Then we have data visualization engineer or BI engineer, who typically work with, again, a lot of SQL or, again, one programming language to get the data out and visualize it using one of the BI tools like Power BI or Tableau or ClickView or all of these tools, right? So they are also very much involved with data in their day-to-day activities. So they are put together with a lot of other data roles here. And finally, data scientist, which is essentially a combination of 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, because you have to understand the business requirements, you have to be able to understand you have to be able to understand the business requirements, translate that, use SQL or any programming language to analyze, might have to build some data pipelines yourself, build a model yourself as a machine learning engineer would do, look into the latest research and try and get some research implemented. So that also could be a part of your role as a data scientist, and then present your findings in the form of a report or a dashboard. So data scientist basically is a combination of all of the above roles at a lesser price point, if I can say that. But yeah, so data scientist is essentially all of these things put together. But again, you are not specializing in one of them. You are good enough in a variety of these different categories. And I will focus on the data scientist role.